So let's talk about shelters and hibernaculums. The difference between, of course, a hibernaculum is where you can spend all winter in, and your shelter is just like your tent or something. A tent, how much insulation do you think a tent would give you?
It just cuts the wind, doesn't it?
Cuts the wind, it does cut the wind, but it gives you a little bit. How much do you think it gives you? Anybody ever done a measurement inside and outside their tent?
I would
Yeah.
say like 30-degree weather. I think it's like 8-10 degrees.
That's right. That's right. I'd say between 5 and 10. You'll get out of the tent. So your body inside that tent is going to warm. Remember, that's your heat source. Is now from your food. Okay, is going to warm that tent up enough to give you 5 to 10 degrees in the tent.
Regardless of outside temperature.
Oh well,
The colder
I don't
it
think
is,
it's
the
lit.
warmer the low end.
Yeah, and if you got wind, of course, that's going to totally affect that, taking that heat away too. Okay, but yeah, I would say that I've been in tents in very cold weather, and with one, and of course it depends on how many people are in there and how they're stacked and stuff, and it depends on how good your sleeping bag is too. But because your sleeping bag is actually supposed to be insulating you, but and then you've got some leakage to the tent. But I would say roughly, if you're getting 10 degrees, you're doing good. Okay, let's just put an upper limit on it. All right.
So what's your opinion of like, not this hardcore winter stuff where it's going to 15,
Uh-huh.
35, 40 degrees a night, to go lighter weight as we backpack and stuff, to just use like a footprint and fly.
Okay.
You've got a gap around the bottom about this much.
Okay.
But you cut off maybe a pound and a half.
Yeah.
By getting rid of the tent part.
And what happens then, John, with your breath? Does it collect on the underneath
I
side?
haven't done it.
Okay, so one of the things that you have to really watch about, and this is on there too, is your ventilation. This is a good way to get pneumonia, is by sleeping in an unventilated tent. Your ventilation is very important, okay?
Now, so you're in your fly, but it's all over around the bottom.
It's over around the bottom. The stuff, the vapor is going to go up.
So you need to have some opening on top.
Right. You need to have some kind of, and you want to design that so if there's any wind blowing, of course, you would have the opening. If the wind's blowing this way, you'll have the wind exactly, so that it will act as a flue.
The lee side.
Yeah, the lee side.
Lee
Yeah, it will act as a flue to take your breath out. Because what you don't want to have is, first of all, is you don't want to have a snowstorm in your tent, which is going to happen because as you breathe, it collects on the inside of your tent, and you will literally have ice crystals. We're talking about ice crystals in your tent. Okay, well you've seen that.
I've done that.
Okay. And ice crystals, yeah, and ice crystals are not good to breathe either. Okay, because they're sharp.
We're wake up to.
Right. And also, if the stuff falls down on you, then you're getting your stuff wet. Okay? So whenever you start thinking about, well, should I have a single wall tent or a double wall tent? Most of the Arctic explorers use a double wall tent, with the first wall being very porous to vapor. Goes on the outside, then it condenses on the inside of the outer wall and sheds off. So you stay dry in there. Okay?
So it slacks, it doesn't drop.
Yeah, no, yeah, it goes right down the side, right. The other thing is that, to where we talked about 4 different kinds of energy. Radiation energy is one of course, the energy that we get directly from the sun as radiation. So let's start talking in terms of some of that.
Before you leave the tent,
Right.
the 5 to 10 degrees presumes this sort of mesh inner screw with an outer shell.
Yeah, yes. So how do animals keep warm in the Arctic? Leveraging radiation from heat.
Doing themselves in the snow.
Okay, now that's different. That's not radiation. That wouldn't allow the sun to hit them. That's insulation. So what has nature allowed certain animals to have? What does a polar bear have?
Black skin.
Black skin. Okay. What's a dog sled? Or a sled dog have? Black skin. Okay. So what color tent do you want? Black tent. Not hard.
I'm slow, I guess on.
Yes. The tents that we have are black. Okay, that means that the outer shelter, the wind fly or the rain fly or snow fly is often a dark color. It could be red too, but black is a good color to have. red, there's a, you know, a bit of a, not really a controversy, but depending upon whether you want to be seen, or you want to be and rescued, or you want to gather the solar energy, you know, you have a red tent to be rescued. Everybody seen the movie The Red Tent? Okay, The Red Tent, okay, they paint their tent red so that they'll be rescued. These guys that were in the Arctic. It's a good movie to rent. Okay? So you double wall tent, use of black body radiation, all right, by having your tent a dark color instead of a light color. Tear resistance and flame retardants. This is something that we're especially affected by in the United States because every tent that's made in the United States by law has a flame retardant on there. But does anybody know what that flame retardant does to the strength of your tent? It weakens it. Okay? So tents that are not flame retardant are supposedly stronger than nylon is for high wind conditions. And you need to, if you're thinking about going into really, really windy conditions, you need to at least consider that. And so sites that you can get on for that are Hilleberg tent maker, the Hilleberg tent maker. He's from Sweden. And actually, I think that you can get Bibler tents that are not, if you call there, I think you can get one that's not flame retardant. That they'll actually save one back for you. That's what I've heard anyway. And they won't flame retard. But what that does is it weakens the fabric for tear resistance.
And they specialize in double wall tents too, don't
They do have double wall tents, but they have single wall tents for the lifeless as well. Bibler does. Yeah. Yeah. Other things that you want to think about when you buy a tent is the snow. If it has a snow skirt, how are you going to lash this thing down to the ground? Okay. You can do it with dead men or your snowshoes or your ski poles by, putting your ski pole or your snowshoe, or a dead man is just a contrived thing that, with crossing branches or something that you put into a snow mound and pack it down real good, and then use your guying system like that, or you can have what's called a snow skirt, which works, if you're out on the ice, you're going to have a snow skirt around it because you're going to either have to have ice screws to hold it down, because you're not going to dig a hole in the ice, all right? So you have to think about where you're going to be. So if you're on the ice, you're just going to have to be able to hold the tent down by putting packing snow around the skirt that goes around the tent. Okay? Ventilation is very important. On an expedition tent, you want to be able to have it ventilated, especially at the tops. And in the old days, you used to see the expedition tents always had a tube coming out. Does anybody remember those from the catalogs? The vestibule had a tube, like a flue, a chimney, that came out like this. Okay? Well, I think that they were probably a little bit better for ventilation than our tents are, but you can get pneumonia from sleeping by breathing your own wet air all night. And it's very bad for you, okay?
You're talking about like our.
Yes, but even if it's condensing in your tent, if it's below 32,
15 degrees.
right, yeah, it will be condensing in your tent, and you will make a fog in there, okay? And you'll be breathing that all night. I haven't had that exact thing happen, but I had got sicker than a dog one time sleeping under an army poncho, which didn't breathe, right? And just breathing my own heavy water-laden air all night. And I just got up and I was totally sick. Another thing about the tents is if you get like an expedition tent, think about how you're going to get in and out of it. A lot of people, all the tents that we usually buy have zippers. If it rains on that tent during the night,
Frozen in.
you don't get out of the tent. Okay? So an expedition tent, well, I didn't bring my expedition tent. We could have set it up in here though, I didn't do anything. But an expedition tent will have another way to get out. They'll have a drawstring exit. Okay, so in the vestibule, they'll just have a big drawstring. So it almost behooves you to go to a custom tent maker if you're really going to be going into cold conditions. And so that you could just open this drawstring and get out if you had to. Okay? And of course it closes quite well when you don't need Okay, quince huts and snow caves. Now then, I wanted to talk about a little bit about the procedure. You saw how they were making quince. A quince hut is what we would make in the snow that we have right here. Igloos are what the Eskimos make when they have snow that they actually cut into blocks. Okay, so it's hard packed snow, been packed by the wind. All right, but we could make a quince hut with the snow that we have right here. So basically, you saw with how they started. What's very important is to get that foundation made, because you don't want this hut shifting in the middle of the night when you're in it. Okay, so you tamp around with your snowshoes or whatever you can to make a foundation to start this quince hut. Then you start piling in the snow, and depending on how big you want it, you're going to pile it up. I've made them big enough for five people before, and they lasted over a month. It was so big that they actually took tours in it at this Porcupine State Park. They were taking the naturalist was taking people on the tour of it because it was so big. And and as I said, I went back a month later and we used it a month later, the same one that we had made. So they do last for a long time. So you pile the snow in, and by working the snow like that, it will put heat into the snowpack. What you're actually doing is putting heat into there. And what will happen is the individual snow crystals will now start to form links, a little net from one crystal to the next crystal. And it will form this network of it's called sintering, is the technical process. It will form this network of necks from one crystal to the next, and it will set up sort of like concrete, not quite that hard, but hard enough that it's a stable structure. All right? This takes about 2 hours, but it does depend upon the kind of snow you're using and the temperature outside. The warmer it is, up to a point, of course, you can't have it, above melting, but it will set up faster. But if you're at a minus 25, for example, and you're using corn snow, which you may not have seen, but it's actually snow that looks like kernels of corn, it's going to take a long, long time for that to set up. Okay? So don't necessarily be dependent upon it if you've got really bad snow conditions or bad snow to use for it. What do you think the insulative properties of a quince hut? So if you're getting up to 10 degrees from a tent, how much do you think you get from a quince hut? The numbers are usually between 30 and 40. Right. And I have on one of your pages here, I have thermal conductivity of various substances. If you want to go to that page. And you'll just start going down some of the conductivity of some of the different substances. You see air being the least conductive of everything. Of course, that's what you're actually trying to make with your insulation, is you're trying to make a dead air space. And that's what the down is actually doing. It's puffing up so it makes a dead air space. So you see air has a very low conductivity. So it doesn't conduct the heat away from your body. It insulates you. So if you go down, you see air, down, polyester, hollow, polyester, solid, snow, old snow. It's still down there and pretty non-conductive, right? You see sawdust. Many of you may remember that sawdust is not conductive, and that's what they used to do to insulate the blocks of ice in the ice houses. And then you had ice all summer, that was gathered on lakes, in the wintertime and would last all summer. So, cork or sawdust. Then you have your things like we use wool felt. Cardboard is actually pretty good. And going on down now, I want to show you the difference between water and air. This shows you that what happens when you get wet, the conductive nature of water versus air there. It's about, if you take this number 1.4 and divide it by 0.006, you get a factor of 233. So that is why getting wet is of such, dire importance in keeping warm. You know this also from when you go and buy a bottle of wine, and at the place that you buy the bottle of wine, if they want to chill it right away, they don't put it in a cold refrigerator. They dip it in cold water because it cools it, 233 times faster. because the conductivity of the water is there for it. So just remember that snow, and even old snow, is pretty insulative. New snow being even better. I mean, that's when you hear about, you know, stories like somebody has actually just dug down in the snow and survived, or the baby, you know, that everybody's out, you know, somebody was telling me, they put the baby in the snow and the baby's found alive and everybody else is dead, you know, because the snow is where they have enough insulation to keep warm. Also, this is important if you have somebody injured, you know. And I will talk a little bit about that, but if you have somebody injured, you need to get them out of the wind and down where they can at least stay dry and insulated a little bit. So you may have to dig a pit in the snow for them. Okay, ventilation on a Kinsei hut is also very important, and the way you design the Kinsei hut. The Kinsei hut is, the way you ventilate it is you put a tube or make some kind of a stack on the top of it. Okay? The air from your breath and stuff is going to go outside the stack. And the longer you make the stack, the better the flue is. It's just like a chimney. Okay? You can use, if you're going out and you're going on a winter camp out, you can use PVC pipe. You can use something that works extremely well is just an old Mac tube. The cardboard tubes is what we use. We just stick them in the top, paint them red before we go so we can see them and gather them before we leave. Put them in the top, you know, and the longer you make it, the better your flue is going to be. When it starts snowing on you at night, you want to keep your flue open. So if you think it's going to snow, you want to make sure that you have a longer tubing to blow that hole open, okay? To keep it open so it doesn't snow and close you in. The structure of the Kinsei hut now is so that...
You keep it perfectly vertical?
Yes, yeah. The structure of the Kinsei hut is such that you will have the entrance on the lowest possible part of it as well. And you actually may make a shelf that you sleep on. So the cold air will gravitate down. It will run down and actually run out the entrance, okay? And you can cover the entrance with something as simple as a piece of tarp or your space blanket so that the wind can't get in there. But you want the cold air to be gravitating down and for you to be sleeping a little bit higher in there if you can. And that's just done by making a platform. Oftentimes what we would do is build a platform up. We would dig in, if you got enough snow, you dig in really low and go up and make your platform, okay? And then carve out the top of your thing and be sleeping on top of that platform. And the way we kept the platform from collapsing on us is we would actually be sleeping on top of our snowshoes and then put our mats on top of that. And so you got your snowshoe down there to kind of hold your weight, and then your mat, and then your sleeping bag, okay? So you're sleeping up on top of this sort of platform and the cold air is running down. Yeah, yes, like a loft, like a beaver loft. They probably do that for that exact reason too. So going back to the building of the Kinsei a little bit, does everybody understand? You let this thing set up for a couple of hours, and then you can start to hollow it out. All right?